ever lied on your resume? Have you ever maybe taken that lie a little too far and you get yourself too far deep and there's no escaping it now? Have you ever gotten that bad and you just have to lean in on it? Well, today we're actually going to look into something like that. So once again, we're going to be diving into one of my childhood memories in regards to gaming. We're going to be looking into something that made 10-year-old me fall off his couch laughing and almost break his neck. We're going to be looking into Resident Evil. More specifically, we're going to be looking into Resident Evil 1's Director's Cut DualShock's soundtrack and how that composer was way in over his head. And just so you know, this entire thing, headphone warning.
Resident Evil.
Young Lorlock's favorite thing when he was like 5th grade were Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, early Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course, video games. One game that was played a ton by a baby-faced Lorlock was Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil as a kid was not the worst thing, especially when your brain isn't developed and you're a dumb 5th grader. Until I was a larger dumb kid, I didn't even notice how bad the dialogue was in the very first game. Most days after school, I would go home or go over to my friend Sean's house and we would play Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut. We got so many hours in on that game, so many hours of joy and hilarity out of this quote-unquote horror game. The original Resident Evil game has a lot of criticisms, and it doesn't really look that wonderful in the 2024 glasses. The original Resident Evil game came out in 1996 on the PlayStation 1. It was produced by Tokuro Fujiwara and was originally to be made as a remake of his horror game Sweet Home, which was a Metroidvania-style game for the NES. It would be directed by Shinji Mikami, who would go to stay on for a majority of the series. The first version was supposed to be on the Super Nintendo in 93, then a fully 3D PS1 game in 94, and they wanted that one as a first-person shooter though, until it eventually became the fixed-angle, pre-rendered tank controls that we all love and hate. The original game was a huge success. One of the major contributing factors to that was the sound. The soundtrack, the score, everything was just extremely memorable and atmospheric. All the save room songs are experiences. Nemesis theme put you in the absolute dread the second that first note hits. Resident Evil 2's iconic police station main office theme. And one I know, every time I hear I get goosebumps, for its ambient soundtrack, is the OG Mansion theme song. The original soundtrack was nothing but short of bangers.
Wesker? Jill?
A good example, especially with the soundtrack, was that it couldn't decide if it wanted to either be a action game or a horror game, just based on the music. It either wanted to have that ambient dread, or it wanted to have someone in commando shooting assault rifles. There's like no in between. Also, don't get me started on how bad the voice acting is.
Joseph!
It's legendarily bad. It's well here.
What is this?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
What? Oh! Oh no!
I mean, that's not why we're here. Okay, let's just get some more of the cringe out of the way, just because it's so damn funny.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich. You were almost a Jill sandwich. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
The original and the director's cut were both very good soundtracks, but we're not here to talk about good soundtracks. We're here to talk about the DualShock version, which, for some reason, had its own. This was probably the most circulated one around the United States. Now, let's take a listen to some of the track's differences. This is one from when you confront Barry. For some reason, it sounds a lot like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Don't believe me? One other one as well that just sounds awful is when you're surprised when a surprise attack happens. If you listen to it closely, you can actually hear the entire orchestra falling down a flight of stairs.
Hey, Bobby, play that one about falling down the stairs. Sure thing. I love it.
So, another one too is, in the original, Wesker's theme fit his image to a T. But then we cut away and we go to the DualShock version, and, well, like, it makes you suspicious. Like, what is going on with this track? What machinations are at play? Like, why are you wearing those fucking sunglasses at night, and why is your aim better than everyone's else? Seriously, watch the live action one. He is wearing sunglasses, running away, no, like 360 no scopes a dog midair, especially if you watch like the remake one with glasses on, better than Chris, who in his bio does sharpshooting and is rivals with the team's sharpshooter. He's supposed to be good at aim. Seriously, like, I don't understand what kind of thing. Chris can't hit a goddamn broadside of it. And the icing on this 4-tier shit-stained cake is the basement theme. Here's the OG one. It's actually pretty good. It actually like does what's supposed to and create that ambient spooky feel. Is the basement theme. The legendary basement theme. What we're here for. And oh my god, it's bad. Have a listen.
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
It seriously sounds like a honey badger got into a drug locker. Now, with as bad as that track is, would it be hard to believe that the actual composer of that is deaf? And with that basement theme, that brings us to the subject of today's topic. Mamoru Samaguchi, the deaf composer who fooled everyone. Samaru Gochi was born September 12, 1963, in the prefecture of Hiroshima. Yep, that Hiroshima. His parents were both what were considered hibakusha, which means they were affected by the irradiation from the bombing that took place in Hiroshima. At an early age, Samaru Gochi showed a lot of talent towards music. He learned how to play piano before kindergarten and was able to compose throughout his childhood. According to a biography put out by his then record label, Nippon Columbia, he could play Beethoven and Bach by 10, and self-taught himself in many things like music theory, harmony counterpoint instrumentation, and orchestration. After graduating high school, he refused to go to music school as he had a strong dislike for modern classical music. He felt that it was too tonal and would work on his music instead. As an adult, he usually studied Western music theory. It was around this point in his life that he would start to suffer from chronic migraines. These migraines would be the harbinger of things to come later on in his life. Oh, that's funny. I usually get one every time I listen to these tracks. At 24, he was diagnosed with a hearing disability. However, despite this, he ends up plowing through this issue in his life and not only continues to do his thing with music, but he thrives. And by thrives, I mean his ego gets in the way. He becomes picky on what he wants to compose for, as he would be offered many composing jobs. One was for a TV drama, but he turned it down, saying it was garbage. He knew he could achieve something far greater and held out until that big thing came around the corner. So instead of producing garbage and composing for garbage, he actually dealt with garbage by becoming a street sweeper instead. But luck would have it, and something did come around the corner. He was offered the job to compose for the movie Remembering the Cosmos Flowers. I mean, Cosmos Flowers was a fairly small gig, but it was his first major composing job. Now, he actually got to compose for something he wanted to do instead of doing these trash TV dramas that he wanted to do. Honestly, like, if I was him, work is work, man. With some actual credentials under his belt, he finally started getting his name out there. And then Capcom reached out and offered him the job of lead composer for the Resident Evil 1 soundtrack. We all know how that went. Capcom either loved this or they didn't listen to what he submitted in the first place, because they actually brought him back to do one of my other favorite childhood games, Onimusha 1 Warlords. But for some reason, that one's actually good. Like, the soundtrack's good, especially since it has the track Rising Sun, which has a significant amount of critical acclaim. It's so good you could almost call it suspicious.
Well, if it isn't Sussy Jack.
Samaroguchi, have you ever heard of the hit game Among Us?
Among Us.
Now, the Onimusha soundtrack is significantly different than the Resident Evil one. You could almost say that he just got better. We'll see in a minute. We'll get back to that here in a second. But not only that, but this soundtrack actually shot him into the stratosphere. It strapped a rocket to him, and Time magazine even called him the Beethoven of the digital age. This moment of glory, however, didn't last long, because before even finishing the entire soundtrack for Onimusha, with only 3 tracks left, he apparently suffered a seizure that rendered him completely deaf. He continued on with composing using his instinct of perfect pitch and finished the gaming soundtrack. It was around this time that Samaroguchi went from being just that guy who made that really cool samurai game soundtrack into somewhat of a bona fide celebrity. Soon after he finished the Onimusha soundtrack and it had been released to the public, he began working on a new symphony that was based around a tribute to Hiroshima. This is a tribute to the victims of the bombings, as himself being a second-gen survivor, it seemed that he was fully qualified to do this. It wasn't completed until 2003 and was performed for the first time in 2008 to the G8. The G8 is a group of intergovernmental global leaders, so just think of like Eminem's group D12, but like with Biden in it. In 2008, Samaroguchi would receive the Hiroshima Citizens Award for his work on the symphony. Now fast forward to the year 2011, and his label, Nippon Columbia, was about to have their 100th anniversary, in which they would be releasing many new, never-before-released things, including Samaroguchi's Symphony, Symphony No. 1, Hiroshima. However, in 2011, the most devastating earthquake hit Japan, which led to another nuclear disaster. This tragedy was the largest earthquake ever recorded, and to Samaguchi made the symphony feel more important in the aftermath. The summer of that year, the album from Nippon Columbia was released and it sold 180,000 copies. You might think, well, Eminem got 31 million views in a day, but this guy isn't Eminem or Bon Jovi or whoever the cool kids listen to these days. He's a classical musician, and in classical musician world, those are like huge, superstar level sales. After the broadcast company NHK announced that they would be doing a documentary about him, going around and meeting with the victims of the aforementioned disaster. They entitled it Melody and Soul, the composer who lost his hearing. Whoa, look at the little kitty. See, Scuba? Samaguchi likes to have pictures taken with his cats. Why can't you take them with me? However, around this time was kind of the start of the downfall of Samaguchi. Things started to begin unraveling. Things weren't making sense. When he was doing an interview for the magazine Area? That one. Anyway, when he was doing an interview for them, the reporter noticed some interesting things. He noticed, one, that he was answering questions faster than the interpreter could sign. And secondly, when a doorbell rang, he immediately responded saying, "I'm here," despite being deaf. Now, how can a composer who is famously deaf react to a doorbell? Well, the reporter also decided to forego publishing this interview and instead wrote a piece entitled "The Deaf Genius Composer. Is Mamoru Samaguchi Genuine?" However, despite this hit piece circulating around Japan, no one seemed to pay it any mind at the time. His music was still being performed, but several other people noticed that it was pieces taken away from other composers. One specific was Gustav Mahler. It seemed to be that he was stealing some of his work. Now, another composer in the audience of one of these symphonies noticed this, and he wrote a scathing article about it. No music publication, however, wanted to take it, seeing as Samaguchi's record label were sponsoring most publications. Instead, this one got published in Shinsho 45 in November 2013, but again, nothing came of this. It's now 2014, and the Winter Olympics are right around the corner, and Daisuke Takeshi is set to represent Japan in the figure skating competitions. Now, Daisuke announced that he wants to be performing one of Samaguchi's pieces called Sonata for Violin. However, once news got out on what Daisuke chose, a man named Takashi Nigaki came forward. Nigaki came out stating that he'd been working with Samaguchi for years, and he'd actually been ghostwriting for him for several of these pieces. However, one of the more devastating things was Nigaki stated that Samaguchi was not deaf. Mamoru Samaguchi. At all. Maybe a little tinnitus, maybe a little ringing in the ear. He's not deaf.
You what?
Nigaki stated that Samaguchi had been posing that he was deaf just to build up his mystique and enhance his image as a composer. He literally was just doing it for clout. This guy is just straight up a clout chaser. He was trying to just build up his own image, trying to make himself look way cooler than he actually was. And even on top of that, Nigaki actually said since back in '96, it was never about money. He just wanted people to hear his music. So even back then, he was just excited that people were listening to him. And according to Nigaki, he said that he would come forth a lot sooner. However, Samaguchi would constantly make claims that he would kill himself if it ever came out, and it would be on Nigaki's conscience. The icing on the cake was when these articles came out, and the final straw that broke the camel's back was the announcement of his work with Samaguchi's name on it in the Olympics. He could not sit idly by and let this continue. Nigaki thought that Samaguchi's music being represented at the Olympics as a lie would tarnish his country, and he couldn't let that happen. On February 12, 2014, Samaroguchi released a handwritten letter stating that he had in fact hired Nigaki and he'd been using him since 1996, as back then his hearing had, quote, gotten worse and he had been deaf, but it returned to him 3 years ago. I don't think that's how it works, buddy. I ain't no earologist, but I'm not sure that's how it works. On March 7th of the same year, he gave a press conference. This time he was clean-shaven, short hair, in a suit. He admitted all the allegations were mostly true, still denying how impaired his hearing was. He did state that he was impaired enough, but not enough to legally qualify him as disabled. He also claimed in his 2-hour-long apology that Nigaki lied about the stupid threats and several other things, and he will be suing Nigaki for defamation.
You made me look stupid. I'm gonna sue you too.
Well, fine, go ahead and sue me.
We watched the entire villain arc of Samaroguchi. Now we get to watch the redemption arc of Nigaki. With everything out in the open, he could finally step out of Samaroguchi's shadows after nearly 20 years. He now can have his name put on projects that he is proud of. On top of that, he was also posthumously given credit and work for his older works like Flowers of the Cosmos and Onimusha. In August of 2016, Nigaki actually got to hold the first symphony since the debacle under his own name. Under his own name, they performed Symphony No. 2, Litany. On top of that, Nigaki would actually return to the gaming industry as well. He would compose for such games such as Earth Defense Force. As for Samaroguchi, he actually has wait, he fucking came back? Are you fucking kidding me? So apparently on YouTube in 2020, a channel called Malice Malefacrum showed up, and it was kind of like a musical narrative of sorts. The music appeared at the time to be uncredited with interesting looking thumbnails, but after some sleuthing, in February 2021, it was in fact revealed to be Samaroguchi. And even next to these narrative pieces, it seems like he has some other more fun pieces. Like he has a tribute to Jim Morrison and his partner Pamela Corson on here. While it starts out kind of slow, interesting, it then evolves into kind of like a trippy, weird acid trip, which seems fitting with Jim Morrison in mind. It does appear that Samaroguchi is at least trying here. He's putting out music, and it doesn't appear to be like he's taking credit, and as far as we know, he's the one that's making it. But, you know, the trust kind of broken after these last 20 years of him stealing the limelight from others. It's kind of hard to believe. I do also kind of want to point out that he did disable comments, which honestly I feel is for the best. The legacy of Samaroguchi may be tarnished forever, so it's kind of understandable why he became an anonymous, faceless YouTuber, with his comments off, which I find hilarious. I hope he becomes a VTuber. I really want to see him do a collab with Nuxanor and Filion. That'd be fun. But like I said back in the Malice Malefacrum section, I don't believe that anyone is beyond redemption. And if you put in the work, a lot can come from it. You can really get wherever you want. Samaroguchi, if he wanted to, could do pretty well if he actually, you know, was honest, genuine, and put forth the effort. Now, while he is trying to better himself, he'll always be the guy who lied to everybody for 20 plus years. And no matter what, no matter how much he redeems himself, no matter how much, no matter how hard he works, he will always be the man who gave us the clown fart song. I cannot run from it. Well, thank you for sticking till the end of the video. It's been quite a wild ride. I mean, we got to cover one of my favorite topics, so I was pretty jazzed, and I hope you guys learned something as well. Resident Evil, for better or worse, has always been a part of my life. I mean, to this day, I still speedrun all the PS1 games, at least anywhere between 2 to 6 times a year, so it's still a big part of my life and a large part of my nostalgia. So the fact that I got to make a video just gushing to you guys more about my childhood memories towards a game, and I got to include the topic. That's just amazing to me. And me being able to give these little essays, even though I'm not the best at them yet, I do still appreciate, and I'm having fun doing these. And if you guys are watching these and you made it to the end, awesome. I appreciate you. It's pretty cool. And you guys are pretty cool for sticking around. Now, before I say cheers, I do get to do something that I have never done before. I get to do a Patreon shout out. So specifically, I want to thank Brittany, Olivia Oblivion, DK Domo, and Meow Bubbles. Y'all are great, and I appreciate you. Go to my Patreon, join as a free member. We can start a little club, cult, family. Haven't thought of a cool name for it yet, so maybe that can be one of our first orders of businesses as a group. We can find out what kind of fun name we should all be. But thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. It means the world. And in the next episode, we're going to try to get ourselves on a CAA watch list. So stay tuned. As always, I'm the Lorelock. Cheers.